Hey everyone, welcome to Innovation Unplugged, the podcast where we sit down with innovators shaping the future of connectivity, AI, and edge computing. I'm Jim Brismitsis, and today I am joined by someone whose insights have helped guide some of the most pivotal shifts in the industry, and certainly here at the lab as well. And his name is Chetan Sharma. Chetan, thank you again for being a guest with us today. As the founder of Chetan Sharma Consulting and the driving force behind a globally recognized event called Mobile Future Forward, Chetan has advised global operators, tech giants, startups, and ourselves on strategies, innovation, and growth. It's a true honor to have someone who's been a practitioner in the industry, but is also very logical, methodological about his approach to these opportunity spaces on our show today. And so with that, let's get unplugged. And Chetan, again, thank you for being a guest on our show today.
No, thanks, Jim, for having me.
Awesome. I remember fondly the very first time you and I had a chance to meet going back, what is it now, 4 or 5 years ago? It's the early days of the lab.
Yeah.
And you were one of the practitioners that really helped me open up my eyes to some of the constraints and the opportunities that the carriers had, having been, in the industry as long as you have. So I guess let's start off with, as being a trusted advisor to the telcos and to tech leaders for decades, what has been the most dramatic change that you've seen here over the last 5 years with all the promises that were made in the 5G era?
So I think it's a great question. It's, if you kind of say, where were we in 2020?
Yeah.
And if you look at some of the leading operators, they went full in on 5G, thinking of 5G as an underlying platform, not as another G that just enables faster speeds and coverage and all of that. That is table stakes that you have to do. But the notion of network as a platform has been in the industry for a really long time.
Yeah.
And to really reimagine their role in the ecosystem, operators really have to step out of what has been their traditional role of connectivity.
Yeah.
And so I think the most innovative and the most interesting operators have been who have gone connectivity plus or plus, depending on who it is. And I'll just name a few because it will help illustrate how the industry have been shaped over the last 5 years. I would say the most forward-thinking and more holistic operators have been from China.
Yeah.
Because they have taken connectivity and built on top of things with edge, things with AI, things going vertical in various aspects of the industries. And while that 10 years ago, it might have been a theoretical concept, they have proven it out time and time again, every year, every quarter, that if you have a systemic way of going after the enterprise opportunities, the market rewards you. And for some of these operators, the enterprise opportunity now, from a revenue perspective, is more than a quarter or some approaching 50%.
Yeah.
So I think that's operators who have recognized that shift early on and use 5G as the basis of their strategy have immensely benefited. And so you see that in their market caps, in their revenue profiles, and so on and so forth. Jio in India, as well as T-Mobile in the US, have been on kind of the same journey, but probably not quite as advanced as the Chinese operators. So I think that's the shift. So it's not a, it's very hard to do, it's not our thing. It has been proven that it can be your thing if you want to embrace it.
Yeah.
And so some operators are going to do it more, logically and methodically and slowly, and others will jump on it and say, we want to do it. And by the way, if you don't get this right in the 5G cycle, you will not get it right in the 6G cycle.
That's the many things that you and I agree on, very little that we disagree on, but the many things that we've always agreed on, it is that. I've always said that 5G was more of a business challenge, a business model challenge for the carriers, less a technology challenge, because they have to refactor how they think of their opportunities ahead. And perhaps in the vein of the Chinese operators that you just mentioned, I think it's safe to say that the Chinese operators looked at they unbounded themselves from the constraints of ARPU and looked at more consumption-based models and others as new revenue. So they weren't constraining their connectivity plus with just ARPU. I think. Keep me honest on this if it's different.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have, they organize them. So it's one thing to have a strategy, and
Right.
it's totally another thing to how do you execute it. Execution is, as you know, especially in large companies, enormously hard. So how do you change the ship or the plane, whatever analogy you want to use, um, midstream,
Right.
right? 5G did give us an opportunity because it's kind of a fresh start for a number of things, a number of initiatives. And so you have to organize internally and your approach to the market. You cannot
Right.
go to an enterprise customer and say, I have got 5G, you can use it for XYZ. That doesn't work. But if you are sitting in the boardroom or sitting in with the CIOs and CTOs of these companies and say, hey, let's discuss your roadmap and see where we can assist you in that roadmap.
Yeah.
And so you understand the requirements of the enterprise to the level that you need to be able to deliver solutions. And
Yeah.
so it's connectivity is obviously going to be part of it. But then the next layer is your edge compute. Yeah,
Yeah.
how are you going to provide all the processing capability? There are multiple ways to do it, but edge compute, private networks. And then the next layer is figuring out very specific aspects of any given industry, whether it's logistics,
Yeah.
retail, mining, ports, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Once you understand that, then you can bring tools to the table. But if you
Right.
go, oh, I have a Mac, or I have a private network, or
Yeah.
I have a 5G SA, the enterprise is like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah. Well, yes. Steve Broughton from our team and I were visiting Portland General Electric around the telco AI cloud pilot that you've been involved in and
Yeah.
helping us think that through. And sadly, Portland General Electric kind of boxed in the telcos to just connectivity, and they couldn't think beyond that to being a higher level service provider, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's in edge computing or AI, which is what we are evangelizing them for. And I think what's different here in the US market, perhaps even in Europe as well, compared to China and some of these other markets you mentioned, is that the enterprise sees the carriers in China, let's say, as more solutions oriented. Yes,
Yeah.
connectivity is a platform, but there's other value that brings to bear there because they did the work, right? They got engaged in those conversations and try to figure out their new there. Versus, let's say, the other carriers in other markets maybe not doing the same. I think one of the points that I had started, one of the points I made in the early journey of the 5G Open Innovation Lab was that 5G was going to be a big boon for the enterprise and sort of a little bit more speed in the consumer space, but don't expect bells and whistles. Certainly don't expect outsized returns and profitability. And I think I was largely right. And you were a big advocate of that too. I fear that 6G is going in the same direction. The standards that I'm starting to read on is really more enterprise centric. Is it safe to say that the Western side of the world, in terms of operators, were hoping for bigger outcomes and bigger returns off the consumer side, and didn't, as a result, get deeper into the enterprise?
I think that's fair to say. Like there are multiple reasons. Lot depends on the market dynamics as well, like what everybody else is doing.
Right.
And so, or what the availability of spectrum is. And so there are other constraints that are market driven or regulatory driven. But in general, I think there was clearly more expectation from the consumer side. Um, and and as such, the enterprise market didn't develop as strongly as it could have.
Yeah.
And neither did operators put enough resources on kind of really harnessing the enterprise side.
Yeah.
And so their go-to-market approaches have been very pedestrian. It has been like very basic. Is really like, we will provide SIM, and SIM becomes the enterprise
Yeah.
strategy.
Yeah.
Versus really truly sitting down with the people who matter and
Yeah.
understanding their requirements and their roadmap, and then bringing in the ecosystem together. Now
Yeah.
the question becomes, do you serve that yourself, or do you bring partners to serve? So that's the secondary question. But the first question is always about understanding the requirements.
Yeah.
And once you do that, then you say, well, is it a one-off, or can I scale it across companies across this industry vertical? And then more importantly, can I scale the solution across multiple industries, right? And then it becomes a ginormous, because operators generally, they deal with billions of dollars,
Yeah.
both in revenues and enterprise, in revenue as well as profitability. And so I think they're constrained by if it's something small and is just tens of millions of dollars, it doesn't rise to the level of attention
Yeah.
within the organization.
Yeah.
But these things build slowly.
Right.
Connected car market 10 years ago was very tiny
Yeah.
when AT&T got into it, and now it's like every car is connected, right? And so I think one should take the same approach that initially it will be small, but gradually it can become ginormous.
Before we get into private 5G, which to me was a give, right? For it was a given that the carriers would play a big role in that.
Yeah.
Sadly, I would have to say that they haven't. We'll get
Mhm.
into that in just a moment. But
Yeah.
you had sent something to me, Chetan, about 3 years ago that really turned the light on for me. And it was so obvious I didn't expect it to be the case, but it was, which is you had said something along the lines of there's no sense of urgency in the carriers. When I said, well, that's crazy. Why wouldn't they have this urgency, right? They all feared that the 5G era, they'd be another dumb pipe as they were sort of, they coined themselves that in the 4G era. Why wasn't there a sense of urgency? And your response was because the business is good, right? ARPU is still quite high here in the United States, and yeah, there's a little bit more depressed ARPU in Europe, but they're still getting good lucrative revenue coming through. They just didn't see the house on fire. And so, from that standpoint, there was little motivation for them to go upset the apple cart. Is that a fair statement based on what you've observed of the journey for
I,
5G?
I think that is definitely one of the components why if your existing consumer business is delivering you revenues that street is expecting, and all you have to do is increase the price a little bit or offer more attractive packages,
Right.
and that in turn yields you higher revenue,
Yeah.
higher ARPU every quarter. Then there is less motivation to uh, go chase new or build new businesses,
Right.
um, and that has some contribution to why enterprise has not really taken off in the Western markets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, one market that hasn't taken off yet in the Western markets at scale, but we're seeing it in China quite a bit, and you have firsthand
Mhm.
experience of it, is private 5G. And
Yeah.
for the life of me, I can't figure out why. Um, I know from the buy side and the enterprise conversations that we've been involved with in selling keen and operating private 5G networks, there's a healthy amount of interest in it. But what
Mhm.
I have seen is that there's a significant price point from some of the vendors who are in the market. What I haven't seen though is many telcos really rolling up their sleeves and taking this opportunity on firsthand. And it might be just because the big telcos, they're used to building big macro networks, and that's not what the enterprise needs. The enterprise needs something else more manageable. But I'd love to get your sense of, why is there a struggle with private 5G when there clearly is a market for it globally?
Yeah, I think you alluded to some of the reasons. There is, I'll go back to the earlier conversation we had about requirements, not understanding the enterprise requirements,
Yeah.
keeping it really simple. This is not a RAN deployment. This is a deployment like an access point that
Yep.
needs to happen. And
Yep.
so it needs to be plug and play. It needs to be less hand holding, less troubleshooting. It should just work like the Wi-Fi access point just works when you
Yep.
plug in. And so the time it takes for the crate to show up from to the time when it lit up,
Yep.
it needs to be like minutes. It,
Yeah.
it cannot be days and weeks and months.
Yeah.
And so enterprises are not used to that. The IT expects that's less like you plug your laptop and it's their new employee is just on the network.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you are going to do private network, um, there should be no, the consumer or the employee should not be forced to adjust their behavior. The
Right.
network just becomes available in the background.
Yeah.
And I think we have not done a good job of that,
Yeah.
like simplicity and pricing. Because pricing cannot be RAN level pricing.
Yeah.
It has to be access level pricing,
Yeah.
the Wi-Fi access pricing.
Yeah.
And I think once we bridge that, or in projects that have been able to do that, and you have seen that firsthand, given
Yeah.
that you have been involved in so many really cool projects,
Yeah.
then it's like a no-brainer for the IT department. Like, of course, we want to expand our
Yeah.
coverage. Of
Yeah.
course, we want to make sure that data capabilities available. Of course, we want to make sure that voice calls don't drop indoors and so on
Yeah.
and so forth.
Yeah.
And so I think that the simplicity of it at scale has been the challenge.
Of the many things that I've observed from afar in China, and then firsthand observed from your trips to China, I think it's safe to say that industry in China has seen private 5G as just as important as cloud computing and applications and all the other core IT. I mean, I remember you sharing a video of one of your trips to the ports. I forget which port it was in China, but it was
Tianjin. Yeah.
yeah, it was completely autonomous. Trucks were driving themselves. They knew where to go. That's all enabled by connectivity. That's not Wi-Fi. That's private 5G. I've also seen
Mm-hmm.
automakers where 90% of the manufacturing process for the vehicle is done by robots. That ain't powered by Wi-Fi. In some cases, not even powered by fiber or copper. It's wireless, right? So these factories have the ability to reorganize based on whatever they're building or producing that given quarter, month, or what have you.
Yeah. So I think it starts from understanding the requirements and the expectations of outcomes.
Yeah.
And once you understand that and work backwards as to what's the state of the art technology today, and
Yeah.
maybe the next couple of years as you roll out these technologies, and then see if that solves the problem
Right.
and that serves the solution, right? And so if you are going to be able to resolve anomalies in this high-paced environment like in a port, it needs to happen in milliseconds, right?
Yeah.
So what do you need? You, of course, need a local compute infrastructure.
Yep.
What do you need? You need a private network, make sure that it's not congested or gets impacted by anything else.
Yep.
If you have EVs running, what do you need? Power sources. Well, generate power at where you need it. And so
Right.
they have solar at the ports,
Yeah.
right? And so I think if it is a requirements driven and outcome based journey,
Yeah.
then everything just falls in place. Like it's not a rocket science to figure it out. But if you go in and say, "Oh, I have a private 5G offering, and this is the price list," it just doesn't fit in with the psyche of an enterprise. Like it doesn't fit in with because they have a hard time figuring out. It's not like a 5G just neatly fits in a spreadsheet that they are thinking. It's really has to be reverse
Yep.
engineered.
Yep.
What technology fits in with their requirements. And
Yep.
sometimes when you have a breakthrough, with say some of the generative AI models, then it can work the other way. Like you say, we have these new capabilities and where can you use it, but still has to be outcome based. Like there has to be a zero fatality goal in the ports. And so work backward. What kind of resilience do you need in the network to make sure that happens? Or you have
Yep.
to deliver 20,000 containers in 24 hours.
Yep.
What kind of resiliency you need in the network and the infrastructure to deliver that,
Right.
right? And so you say, well, I cannot do it in a traditional network. I cannot do that with just slicing, or I cannot just do it with Wi-Fi. I need these parameters, and then I have a confidence that I can deliver it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's just a combination, and the understanding of the requirements is a critical piece that people have to invest in.
Well, speaking of requirements, you and I have just wrapped up a 3-part series of lessons that telcos could learn from the hyperscaler journey, thinking of their networks as platform, as we called it, platformization. And then the last is, what's their role in AI? And I certainly don't want to lead the witness on this, but I think there's a very clear opportunity for the carriers in artificial intelligence and playing a big role in that market space. I'd love to get your perspective on where you think the carriers, really have an opportunity and why they should move towards this.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes operators get in the markets where hyperscalers are quite active
Yeah,
and strong. There is resistance, and there is a scar from the cloud wars
yeah,
a decade or so ago, and so there's resistance to opening the mind on um, anything to do with the cloud, anything to do with kind of a platform that's also served by the hyperscalers. But I would encourage operators and the ecosystem to really look at projects, such as the one that you are running in
yeah,
Bellevue,
yeah,
which is like a absolutely beautiful example of how the edge, telco edge, plays a role in solving a specific problem. In this case, intersection safety. Right? It could very well be manufacturing safety. It
yeah,
could very well be a smart cities safety initiative or whatever it might be.
right,
And so where you don't need to, the cost economics of sending everything to the cloud is just prohibitive in terms of execution.
yeah,
And so that's where telcos can play this enormous role. Like to fulfill that project requirement,
Right.
to be able to digest what's happening in real time and be able to respond in real time and get into this whole consumption-based economy
Yep.
versus a flat rate, this gigabyte-based model that we have become used to.
Yeah. And that is no more true than, again, when Steve and I were in Portland last week meeting with Portland General Electric, and that conversation came up, and they took a double take and they said, hold on, you think a carriers can provide this cloud edge AI? And so, we talked a little bit about that, but we painted the theoretics of, yeah, let's just say that those devices,
Yeah.
smart meters or other things, were on a carrier SIM. We'll call it an AI SIM.
Yeah.
And yeah, you were able to inference your data, but remember that inference now data, the smaller payload of AI data, the anomalies, go to your hyperscaler cloud instance. In their case, it was Azure. And so you're now fine tuning and retraining, and you're taking actions off that data. And you're doing this all secure because none of that data ever touches the quote unquote internet, right? It's on the
Yeah.
carrier's
Yeah.
backbone, and the backbone, most all carriers have connections right into the hyperscalers, anyways.
Yeah.
And so the point there was like, wow, if that really works, yeah, we're kind of in. This makes a whole lot of sense because it saves us from having to deploy little Jetsons or some AI infrastructure, patch it, and in their case, secure it. That's really critical. So the
Yeah.
fact that they could do this on a carrier's network is actually like, wow, that would be really cool. If let's dig into those use cases now.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk about that time to market as a requirement,
Yeah,
but for some, time to market is a big requirement. And so, how do you come together and very quickly, put together a solution that serves that requirement?
absolutely. So as we're coming up to time, Chetan, this wouldn't be a complete podcast with you if we didn't ask what's ahead in 6G. Now, there's a set of new technical requirements that are going after, or rather, the standards are going after in the 6G realm. But if you were to advise a carrier kind of what their role is, what are some of your thoughts around how they should be thinking about 6G, why they need to be organizing maybe differently today to take advantage of that, and what would be the lost opportunity if they didn't?
So I mean, this is it's worth a discussion on its own.
Yeah, its own
But
podcast. Yeah,
but I would say in 6G we cannot just continue what we started in 5G
yeah.
and just slap move 5G label and put the 6G one. Like if the use cases and discussions are the same, then we have not done justice to the ecosystem. I would say I think the most critical element of 6G has to be very economics driven technology strategy and technology economics driven standards development. We cannot develop solutions that are just science experiments. It needs to be very practical in terms of how operators upgrade their networks.
Mhm.
We cannot be too prescriptive in what operators need to do or ecosystem players need to do to enable 6G. It needs to be kind of more because it slows you down. If you're waiting for the standard to firm up, AI is moving at lightning speed. You need to be able to take advantage of all the progression that has taken place. With software upgrades, you should be just able to provide the new release, a new capability that has come in and up and running into the network, available to the. Otherwise, you're not a platform. If you have to
Yeah,
wait for this whole cycle, then you are a really, really slow platform that
yeah,
nobody will want to build on top of.
right.
So I would say, if my single message to the industry, it is very focused on economics
Yeah,
and in speed to deployment,
yeah,
and that should drive, I think, our overall standardization process. Otherwise, we are just repeating the cycle.
yep. And I'll end with this. Actually, a quick comment from you, I think, would be very useful. At GTC, NVIDIA's GTC in DC now 2 weeks ago, I guess.
Yeah.
There was many announcements. So one of the bigger announcements made was NVIDIA's $1 billion investment in Nokia. And there's a lot of rumors and speculation as to what that is. But Jensen, to his credit, did say that we've kind of lost our way here in 5G dominance in the US. And it's really important that we actually reestablish that for good reasons. And he outlined a bunch of those good reasons. I think it's the underpinning of the GDP of the United States and other markets around the world. Connectivity is so critical to how modern enterprises are operating today and is, to your point, a very important fundamental platform for their AI, for their connected automation, whatever's going on down the road. And I think NVIDIA taking a big bet like that is pretty meaningful. I'm curious to get your perspective off that news.
Yeah, so I think having NVIDIA part of the ecosystem is great. Like you need external stimulus to kind of re-energize the ecosystem, and the notion of running workloads on a compute platform um, has been a dream for a lot of us. And so uh, I think NVIDIA coming in with all its heft and technologies is great for the ecosystem.
Yeah.
I think what from a kind of a global competitiveness point of view, we do need work around alignment of technology and industries. Our industries are not in sync with technology roadmap, and that is true with both 5G as well as AI.
Yeah.
And so, unless we have some kind of work around policy or some loosely formed consortiums in various industries to align the industries with the technology roadmap, we will lag. And that's a big risk for the US market.
Very true. Well, Chetan, thank you so much. We've taken a little bit more time than we normally do, but this conversation absolutely warranted it. We appreciate you offering your time today. This brings us to the end of our episode with Chetan. From reshaping telco strategy to lighting the path forward for enterprise-led growth, Chetan's insights remind us that the future belongs to those who want to rethink it, reframe it, and certainly retool it. Chetan, thank you again. I look forward to bringing you back on to a future show as these topics continue to evolve. Thanks for listening to today's show. If you like the show, please like it and reshare it with your colleagues. Let's get the word out. There's a lot of opportunity here in connectivity. And so with that, thanks again for watching today's episode of Innovation Unplugged. Stay curious and stay unplugged. And Chetan, again, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks a lot, Jim.
Awesome.